Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdist Dave. And today I'm hanging out with Jordan Richet, which I had to ask because I would have totally butchered that.
I come from the land of the French. I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, we're actually commiserating just before going live about that. Frint, I would get Frint all the time.
Yeah, I get Richer. People throw the T in. I get Richter all the time, which is changing it over to German. I mean, I don't really understand how people's brains work on that.
I don't know. It was cool, New Mutant,
Yeah.
with vibration powers.
That's right. Yeah. It's a cool last name. It's just not mine.
Yeah. So how are you doing today? How's the apocalypse going for you?
Oh, well, we're doing all right. We're handling it in as Canadian a way as we can up here, and we've got our troubles too. So, but the rollout is happening. I think the insides of restaurants open they open tomorrow, so that's pretty exciting
Cool.
for people who are willing to do that. I'm still doing takeout for now.
Yeah, I feel the same way. But,
Yeah.
Well, actually, not many people actually know this, and they won't find out until next week. But we actually just filmed in person again yesterday, but wearing masks. So
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes. So we try to stay apart a little bit, and we've got masks on. And me and Ted are also family anyway, so there's that.
It's everything within reason, right? Like and that makes sense. That's cool. That's exciting, though. Was it cool to be back in? Were you back in the studio? Now I'm interviewing you.
Yeah. I guess we were back in the studio. So it took a little longer than usual because we're like getting back into it and having to set everything up. We had split up the equipment to shoot remotely. Mm-hmm. But my office is in the basement and it is a nightmare for sounds. Mm-hmm. And so it's like there's no sound control. So now we'll see how muffled we sound, how bad it is. If we sound like Muppets or not, or Charlie Brown's teacher.
Oh yeah, the trumpet sound, yeah.
So I haven't spoken to you since the last Kickstarter, which was super successful. You guys are killing it. Are you gonna go for the hat trick?
Well, I mean, we obviously we hope that each one does a little better than the last. Every successful Kickstarter, regardless of how much we make, is still a feather in the cap, And I mean, Humblewood was a surprise, as we were talking about before. You can't take it for granted, just a big success like that. But then Animated Spells 2 doing as well as it did was like. It sort of solidified that, hey, maybe we make pretty good products that people like. You know what I mean? Humblewood had a cute bird on the front, and sometimes that can skew your numbers, I think. And so in this case, this was a sequel to an old one of our first Kickstarters, and so we didn't know if people would be bored or interested or whatever. So it was really great to see. It's
also a little bit of a niche thing too.
It is, and especially right now, speaking of COVID, we make physical products that are meant to be played with at the table, right? So, it was really nice to see. I mean, we made a big emphasis in the Kickstarter, and we kind of shuffled some things around because of COVID to make sure that we had a lot of digital content going out. So through the Kickstarter, you're going to get GIFs. You got GIFs and PDFs and stuff like that. And so, we tried to make sure there was as much usable online, when you back the project. But considering we make things that you kind of need to see in person, it was really reassuring that people loved our stuff. So of course we'll be back at tables soon, right? So soonish.
Yeah, it's eventually in the larger scheme of things, it's just a blip.
Yeah. But sometime in 2025 or 2028, we'll all sit down at a table together again in hazmat suits. It'll be good.
It'll be fine,
mm-hmm.
unless the real apocalypse happens, and then we'll just be Mad Maxing it.
Yeah, we'll all be ready. We'll know how to swing maces and swords and stuff. So we'll be right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your character having proficiency in longsword means you have proficiency in longsword. So
you also got some nominations for some Ennies too, as well.
Yeah, that was really cool. Full disclosure, of course, as we talked before, you kind of submit your own stuff to the Ennies, but when it gets to the decision about what actually is put into the categories, it's up to a panel of judges, so they've got to go through probably thousands of piles of things to see, what's going to work and what's not. So, the big project that I work on, the Big Bad Booklet that we put out through our Patreon, it's like a monster month kind of thing. That got nominated for Best Monster / Adversary, which is a category I didn't know existed until this year. And it almost seems like they might have invented it because I think a bunch of monster manual type things came out. But I'm very proud of that. And then we, Humblewood, the box set, got nominated for Best Production Value, I believe.
Okay.
Which, of course, of course, it's a very, I feel it's a very good looking product. And then the animated, the Deck of Many Animated Things, animated spells, was nominated for Best Accessory, which wasn't super surprising. But then we also got nominated for Product of the Year, which, of all the things that have come out, they only picked 10, so that's pretty great.
Oh, you guys are working on the any Grand Slam.
I guess so. I don't know. I don't know if there's, what's the, in the arts, there's getting a Tony and an Oscar and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if RPGs have the same thing, but, it's just neat to be on a list, on the list, and if people voted for us or not, that's great. But it's neat. I never thought. I mean, the last time I was on your show was a couple of years ago for the first animated Kickstarter, and I didn't think we would be here. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, being nominated once is really cool. About 4 times.
Yeah. I mean. I had no complaints, I guess. Sorry, I'm bashful about it. I don't know what to say. You know what I mean?
You don't gotta say. You don't have to say. You don't have to say anything. It's just really cool. So with everything going on, how has it affected your gaming? More or less the same?
A lot more gaming. When your friends are all trapped in their homes and are seeking entertainment. And you're a game master willing to put the time in, you get to play a lot of stuff. And I've been able to trick a lot of friends into trying out new systems and stuff too. Since that's how bored they are. They're willing to put aside D&D for a bit and play some other stuff. So there has been a gaming boom in my social circle because of COVID. It's probably the only silver lining. But I've actually gotten to know Roll20 really well too, which I never thought I would. But
we take our wins where we can get them.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's some friends I'm spending more time with now than I ever did before, since they don't have all the busyness of all the other things in their life. So, trying to take that as a little blessing,
So, what games are you playing?
I got heavy into Blades in the Dark, which is the heist kind of game where you all play. You think Ocean's 11 or that kind of thing. It has a lot of really cool mechanics, and it's got a big downtime mechanic built into it, which I really like, where you zoom out and plan your next operations and who you're gonna go after and stuff. And lots of the world has a lot of different factions that you can kind of mess around with. Really cool. Brought a lot of those mechanics from that game back into D&D. And then the other big game that I've been playing a lot of is called Heart, which is from Rowan Rook and Deckard, and Chris Taylor and Grant Howitt are the designers. And it's a horror dungeon crawl, body horror dungeon crawl. I've explained it like
Saw is that kind of thing, or
sort of. It's more like Sam Raimi, like Evil Dead 2 Sam Raimi, okay. Kind of if he decided to make his own version of D&D with a little bit of Cronenberg and stuff like that mixed in. The wizard is full of bees. They've invited a hive of bees to live inside of them, and all their powers are based on the bees giving them abilities. So it's kind of weird, but I'm really, really enjoying it. It does horror right, and it's fun. Those
wizards.
Are the 2 big ones. Yeah.
Of course.
Kind of mundane, really, but yeah.
Oh boy! So I take it you're running these games. You're usually the GM.
Yeah. I am the one with the books. I'm sure we talked about this last time, but of course, as soon as you buy the book, you are the person who's going to run that game at least first. But surprisingly, I've gotten a few friends willing to take on GMing them as well, so we kind of alternate and stuff. the free time, man. It's just making people more open to doing stuff. I mean,
Yeah. So does running these other games give you more inspiration for the deck of many, and maybe incorporating
sure.
some of that stuff into your own products?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's important to me, and it's important to the crew, to start looking at branching out into different directions. And we don't want to just we don't want to be reinventing the wheel too much. We want to be trying to do new and fun things. And I personally believe you got to play a lot of different games to even when if you're focusing on making D&D stuff, you got to understand what else is out there and find ways to improve the experience or change the experience in interesting ways.
Yeah, if you don't leave the bubble, you're not going to get exposed to anything new. You're not going to. So there's no place to garner inspiration from. I mean, I even find just like switching up the genre, not even just mechanics, stuff like that is super helpful for, for kind of like shaking things up, knocking some of the rust off.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I love running noir D&D games. D&D's not set up for noir, but I try and tell those kind of stories. I ran a Western D&D game, where there was a train and gunslingers and stuff, but also magic. You're right. It's about trying to push the boundaries of what you can do with it, right? So.
Yeah, so Eberron's kind of good for that.
Yeah.
It kind of facilitates playing different types of stories.
It certainly is the least D&D setting, I think. I mean, until Spelljammer comes out or something. And then, and I mean, here's hoping. I don't know if you're hoping for Spelljammer, but I sure am.
I'm open to whatever they do. I would prefer something like Spelljammer over Dragonlance or Greyhawk or any other generic fantasy that I could literally play with the old books and it would not change anything.
Sure. There's a young Jordan that would really love to have a nice Dragonlance book because that was my jam when I was a kid. And I would get it probably just to have it. But you're right. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from running Dragonlance right now.
Yeah. There's very little conversion would need it to make that into a game. I mean, we have most of what we need there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would much rather see something like Dark Sun or Spelljammer, Planescape, things that are a little bit more different.
Planescape is the holy grail. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
they keep sort of hinting at it, sort of, but
I feel like Planescape and Dark Sun, it's just like it's all about Brahm and Tony D'Arlizzi. Like those guys like made those settings what they were just because they were just so visually spectacular and different.
Yeah, and it would be kind of important to bring them on board, right? Like, although I don't know if Brahm fits the current D&D aesthetic.
Yeah, no, that one might be tougher, but Tony D'Arlizzi definitely.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of beholders, I think of him now. When, of course, Modrons and stuff, but so many actually his Hobgoblin is my favorite Hobgoblin.
Yeah,
the one from, I think it's the second edition or whatever. That Hobgoblin is what I picture when I didn't realize until later that they had big Wolfman beards, because he drew them more like they just were like square jawed and red, and they were really cool. So. Yeah, it would be important. I think people would be really disappointed if the art wasn't represented the same way, for sure. So maybe that's why they're hesitant. It would
definitely change the feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. They've been really slow with these, and they love to double down on Forgotten Realms. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a horse in the race, really. I mean, I homebrew everything for the most part, so.
That's the same for us too. Like, we might cherry pick a little bit from books here and there, but for the most part, we just make up our own stuff anyway.
Yeah, that's what a new source book is for me. It's just a bunch of stuff I can chop up and reskin and throw into my home brews.
So, do you have your own world or campaign you've been playing in, or is it different every time you play?
Yeah. No, it's what I really like is the living world kind of idea. So I have a big urban setting that I've been running since 5th edition came out, and basically every player that's played has added some new aspect to it. The first person to play elves decided what elves were going to be like in the world, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so most of I have run some modules. I ran Strahd and I ran Dragon Heist, those two were more my speed as far as the stuff that came out. And then, but yeah, mostly it all takes place in that one city. And I've done a bunch of different campaigns, but they've all been different angles. I've done one where all the players were members of the City Watch. I've done one where they were all basically like the Hellboy crew, the ones that bump back. And I have one right now where they are all like academics at the university that are dealing with weird monster incursions and stuff. And so, but the world has been growing, and it's always been the same setting, which is really great.
How do you go about setting up those games? I mean, are you generally playing with the same players all the time? Do you pitch them? Do you give them several different options and then go, this is the one we went with?
Yeah, I started using a method that is just a bunch of cue cards, like a bunch of recipe cards or whatever they're called. I write down the 3 pillars of play on one on each card, and then I write down themes or genres or something. So there's like high adventure, noir, horror, or something like that. And then I write 3 one-sentence campaign hooks, and making sure that everything is what I'm interested in doing, right? And then I give those 9 cards to the players, and I say, pick one from each category and build the campaign you want to play. And so they'll be like, oh, I really like this, Hellboy thing, but I want to have a noir vibe, and I want our main pillar to be exploration. I'm like, okay, perfect. Now I know what the players want. Obviously, I'll use the other pillars and mix some things in from everywhere, but that's sort of how I've been building it. And then I just use the city that I built as the setting. And having run multiple campaigns in the city, it's built itself up. A lot of the work is already done. I can reference the things that have happened in other campaigns and make them events that happen in the future ones. So, yeah, and then I have a core game group at home, but I try and bring in new players as much as I can. So
that's a great method. I like that idea. I mean, the last time that I did a session 0 was I just came up with like 4 campaign scenarios and be like, hey, pick one of these. I do like the concept of the mixing and the matching. So have you gotten any combinations that you weren't expecting?
No, I mean, because I'm the one controlling the what's on the cards, like there aren't a lot of surprises, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's always interesting it's interesting to see well, no one ever picks high adventure, like high fantasy anymore, which I think is interesting. I mean, that's what D&D does the best, I think. But so it's always noir or horror or mystery or whatever that they go for, and that's A-okay by me because those are the stories I like telling. But I always include high fantasy in there just in case, and
yeah.
But maybe it's the rest of the ideas don't. Like, I can't imagine doing a Hellboy story with a high fantasy bent. Like Hellboy is all about working. You're a government worker, like you just happen to be a demon too. So
yeah. You have any tips for running noir with D&D for people?
Well, I highly recommend reading. If you want that mystery kind of vibe, if you want that clock ticking kind of vibe, I really do recommend checking out Blades in the Dark, because it has a lot of mechanisms to put pressure on players. So if you want to run a game that's like a noir mystery where they're detectives, they're investigating things, and you want that feeling of like information kind of slipping away from them before they get to it, Blades in the Dark has a lot of advice on how to run those types of games, like under pressure games, but then also it has a mechanism called they're called clocks. They have another name. It's project clocks or something like that. But they're literally a little pie piece that you use to just fill up, and it can be like when that clock fills up, the City Watch finds you or whatever. And incorporating those into D&D has made a lot of like that mystery and social interaction stuff really a lot easier. But honestly, it's about tone, and it's about working with your players to make sure that their characters fit the noir vibe. And I personally believe that you could have a noir barbarian without a problem, but it's about figuring out how how that works. The barbarian in a noir movie is the big goon standing at the door that just cracks his knuckles until the fight inevitably breaks out, right? You just got to reframe stuff.
Yeah, one of the last barbarians I played was Tony Two Tusks, and that's how I kind of played him, like a North Jersey and New York kind of vibe, and he would wear suits. But and kind of like the fun thing about the barbarian is you have more flexibility because you don't have to worry about armor, and when you're wearing armor, that kind of changes the vibe of the character.
Yeah, why aren't there more snappy dressed barbarians? It's like wizards. All my wizards wear suits and stuff because they don't have to worry about being padded out or anything. So yeah, why isn't the barbarian wearing a tux? You know, that's my favorite thing to do. Sorry,
I said the monk can do it too.
Sure, yeah. Anyone who's just normally walking around in their pajamas, right? You can put them into pretty much any outfit you want. So why not go fabulous? The one noir game I had two ogre brothers that were working for the mob, and what were their names? Mungo and Bruno or something like that. But yeah, they were wearing suits, 3-piece suits all the time, except they were just huge, like big gorilla-sized monkey suits. So yeah, it was fun. It's always fun to mess with those tropes. That's the idea. Is you go to something like tvtropes.com and you read through all the noir tropes and you just try and incorporate as many of them as you can into the game. And surprisingly, especially with Eberron being out, that's a Imagine noir kind of setting. Like, you could do it with D&D. It's just a little extra legwork up front.
Yeah, so like early on for 5e, before the Eberron stuff was out, I ran a couple one-shots, and the fun thing about Eberron is figuring out how to let the players win at the end, but walk away feeling like nobody won.
Right.
Because I feel like that's the perfect like noir ending.
Yeah, the idea that the city, that no matter what you do, the city's gonna no matter how much ground you reclaim, the city's gonna fill up, and just get the bad guys are still gonna fill that gap again. It won't be the same bad guys because you knocked out those ones, but yeah. It's tough.
You win, but you still go through the grinder.
Yeah, D&D revolves so much around leveling up and getting powerful and super strong. It's tough to convince some players sometimes that sometimes a loss is a more interesting story. You know what I mean? That's another good reason to play things like Blaze in the Dark and Heart, where Heart, for example, your ultimate ability, the final ability that you get, will kill you in some way. It's ultimately you will sacrifice yourself to do something, but the thing that you do is huge, and it usually will solve the big problem you're doing in the campaign, and that's fun. So they don't have levels, but from the start of character creation in that game, you're thinking about how your character's going to kick the bucket. And I mean, I just wish more D&D campaigns kind of encourage that kind of thing. Strahd kind of gets close, like noble sacrifice and stuff to try and against really horrible odds, but they don't really talk about losing that much in D&D, and they talk about victory quite a bit. So,
what is it? Phoenix Dawn Command is another RPG that Keith Baker did.
Yeah, I got it. It's great.
Yeah, I've played half of one session, but that's another game where the concept is you level up by dying, and you can only die 7 times or whatever the number is.
Yeah,
and that's it. You're done.
It's great. It sort of I've run a few 3 or 4 sessions of it, and yeah, it really, when it clicked in people's heads that they could sacrifice themselves to do something cool. I mean, the advantage of coming back from the dead after is pretty reassuring, I guess. But yeah, I mean, how many movies and books have you read where the important character dies at the end, and you know what I mean? Why isn't that reflected more in games? This has gotten very morbid.
Yeah. That's okay. No, because you know why? Because then it kind of feels like the game is over, right? I guess for that character, and players, players aren't used to that, especially in more modern games. Like in earlier editions of the game, it was different, right? Because you might show up with a stack of characters and you expect to go through some of them, and that's a very specific style of play now. Mm-hmm. So I feel like reintroducing some of those concepts are a bit tougher.
Yeah, I find I find that when I play with GMs, they're kind of okay with their character kicking the bucket. I don't know if you feel that way about your PCs, being a GM as well. But like, I am kind of I. You can't get attached to any of your NPCs. You create the best character, the best villain, of whatever you want. Their entire lot in life is to get slaughtered by the PCs, right? And you could try and keep them alive as long as you want, but ultimately the goal is for the PCs to take them down. So you don't get attached. You have to build effectively player characters, like characters with depth, the same depth as a player character. But you have to just get used to them being killed wholesale, right? And so I find when I'm playing, I'm always looking for that opportunity, to sacrifice or try and get my character, bring them to a satisfying end. And I think it's just because I become more comfortable with losing them, So it's interesting. It's just something I noticed about playing with GMs there.
Yeah, you might be onto something with that. To me, it's just an opportunity to make another character, right? Like, I've got like endless character ideas that I'm never going to play. So if this character's story ends, another character.
Why not churn through a few and try out some new ideas? Like, nothing wrong with that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Tony Two Tusks, his story did end a little early, as he found a jump check to not fall in lava.
Well, it's always the little things that get you.
It is the little things that get you, but that's fine. Make a new character, keep going.
Right.
It's an RPG, right? So sometimes people forget there's a game to it as well.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's a tightrope. I want my players to care about their characters and each other and stuff. Like, that's important to the game for the game to be interesting to me. But I also want them to help me tell a cool story. And if one person can throw another person over that lava and sacrifice themselves in the process, that makes for a really cool scene, And it's tough. It's sometimes tough convincing players to do that. But there are games where that's built in, where the player gets to, and again, go out and try new things, and you'll find ways to bring those back to D&D.
And also, too, I find that, when that stuff happens, the other players have this other thing they can now participate in the game. A lot of times where, they're going through the grief of having lost a companion. Or when they bring up that character, a couple sessions later for whatever reason. In some ways, your character gets to live on.
Sure. I mean, obviously, you probably had your own goals, and your party members can help you finish the last leg of whatever journey you were trying to do. It's just, there's lots. It's just one of those things that is so pivotal in all the fiction that we watch and books that we read and stuff. But D&D it's so hard to kill people in that game. I find. I don't know if you find that, but that makes me sound like a monster.
Jordan is a monster, confirmed.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm the worst.
5e characters are a bit tough. Although we did play in a game that after the characters went down, the DM is just would have the NPCs just off them. So 2 hits and you're done. So we've definitely seen truly killer DMs.
Yeah, it's about giving it a cool end. It's not just adversarial trying to murder everybody. That's never my interest. It's just the drama of it is interesting, and if it can happen at a really cool time, then great.
So we were talking off air about upcoming projects. Are you allowed to talk about those?
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of ongoing projects in a lot of ways, but so obviously we just had our animated Spells Kickstarter 2 that went really well, as you've mentioned, and so we're working on finalizing all the art and fulfilling that. It also had the tarot deck, which people are very excited to see. And then our big ongoing project right now, which was also, as I mentioned, nominated for Best Monster/Adversaries, the Big Bad Booklet. It's basically like a zine that we send out monthly through our Patreon, and each one has one big boss monster in it designed for D&D, and then it has all of the setting details and their layer and everything, so that you can just plug them into your game. They're world agnostic in the sense that we don't tie them obviously to any setting, so there isn't a Humblewood one or anything like that. But you could put them into anything. So we've had everything from a hill giant werewolf named Tussin Tenor, and we've got a sentient sword and a robot body called the Maker. And then I actually got to write and do the illustrations for one called Pork and Bean, which were inspired by a couple of PCs I played in a one-shot. Pork is a bugbear assassin, and Bean is a goblin berserker. And they were sent to kill each other on the battlefield, but they both got struck by lightning at the same time, and their brains were kind of fused together. They were linked. And now, as much as they try, they can't kill each other because they each can outthink the other's moves, because they're just connected in their brains, and so now they can't kill each other, even though that's all they want to do. So they've been forced to team up, and of course it was all inspired by Colossus and Wolverine, and so they've got to move. I created I'm sure someone has done something similar, but they've got shared legendary actions. So individually, they're not particularly much stronger than the average, assassin or berserker, but together they've got a shared list of legendary actions that, and one of them is the fastball special, of course, where Pork picks up Bean and throws him into battle.
So Raja, Pork and Bean are friendship goals? I don't think so. He just said they want to murder each other.
So, if that's the same Raja, that's Raja from work. All my friends are in the chat. I didn't even notice. Yeah, Raja is our graphic designer and an artist at work as well. And she's always hyped up Pork and Bean. She likes a little bit of murder angst between friends, which I understand. So.
All right. Note to self: no sleepovers with Raja.
Yeah. Just make sure the knives are locked up, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. The pointy things. Do you have a personal favorite?
Well, apart from obviously Pork and Bean are close to my heart. It's hard to pick. Each one is so unique, Another one of our in-house writers, Chris, wrote The Prince in Ivory, which was our take on the Tooth Fairy. And he is sort of a fashion-obsessed, like perfection, aesthetics-obsessed fae that harvests the teeth from children to build like ivory statues and golems that are in his image and stuff like that. The illustration on the cover of that one is amazing, and it's a really fun little story. There's some great illustrations inside of a sleeping kid and a couple of like fae like trying to pull a tooth out prematurely and stuff. And that one is a lot of fun.
Ain't nobody got time for waiting for that tooth to fall out.
That's right. Yeah. And then there is Herathos, that is like a fallen angel story, fallen god story, and they are trapped in this stone dimension, chained to this rock, and they lure people in with the he was the god of kings, and they lure people in with the promise of turning them into kings, and instead turn them more into like the knight at the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where you're enslaved to him and stuff. There's just what we do is we reach out to writers and we try and find people we'd like to work with, or people that want to work with us, and we kind of use it as a test. And so it's just been, and then we find artists that match the writing, and it's just been a really cool experience to just see what people come up with, right? And so I'm really proud that each one is different. Like Tussin Tenor, who was in one of the nominated ones, he's a hill giant, but he has so much personality, and because he can transform into a giant wolf, like he changes the game for the hill giants, right? And he's obsessed with hunting other hill giants. He was the runt, and he was always treated badly. And then when he became a werewolf, he turns on the rest of the giants, and kills them wholesale. And he doesn't even know. He's so stupid. He doesn't even know the power that he has. And like werewolves are coming to visit him from all across the land, and he just shrugs them off. He just wants to eat. It's just fun stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
He's got werewolf groupies.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're like the ones actually running the operation because Tussin Tenor is a dummy, and so he has no idea what's going on, and he's like the most powerful thing in the area.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. A lot of great ideas being tossed around, and so many cool ones coming down the pipe too.
So there are calls in the chat for you to do the mob voice.
I don't know what that I don't know exactly what they're talking about, but I mean, I think it's all the lingo and stuff.
Yeah.
That they're probably talking about. Do you do voices in your games?
Sometimes, not as much. I'm not definitely not.
Have you got one
guy.
you're known for? I'm changing the subject, by the way.
I do not think I do. I'm not, and I'm terrible with accents. So I don't do accents per se. And the only voices I can consistently do are like if they're like reptile creatures or snake creatures or bird creatures, because you can kind of like just be more sibilant, but I am terrible. Like
tossing some squawks.
Yeah, right. So King Blurk voice is what they're requesting.
Okay, King Blurk. Yeah, that's another one of our big bads.
Yeah, it's okay. You do not have to do voices. I will not command that you perform for us.
They can request in private.
Yeah.
Request in private. Hilarious.
Also, it is kind of weird to be like on a show or an interview or whatever, and all of a sudden like, all right, now do this part in your character.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah.
Unless it's your thing, then it's totally cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I don't do a lot of voices either, and it's fine. Like I think like now with the popularity of Critical Role and lots of voice actors and actors now playing the game, people feel like they have a pressure to talk in character and do voices and do all these things, and it's great to do that, and it's a fun aspect of the game. But at the same time, I don't think any player should ever feel pressured to do that or to play that way if it makes them uncomfortable.
It's not a requirement, and it shouldn't be an expectation. Yeah.
If you want to come to my game and talk in third person, that is completely fine, and never use a voice. Everyone enjoys the game in different ways.
That's something that the player's handbook handles pretty well. Is it mentions like you can describe what your person's doing and saying, or you can act as your person. So.
Yeah. So they're all definitely valid. So do you prefer DMing or do you prefer playing?
DMing is what I love. The world building and the telling the stories is just too important to me, and there's a bit of a control thing as well where I like to be able to control the flow of things. Playing a single character like as a PC is a vacation. I don't know if you feel the same, but like when you finally get to sit down and just be one person for a while is really nice. Like I will never say no to the opportunity, but as far as my preference now, I love being able to guide people through a story and think on the fly. When you're a character, you can't just in D&D anyway. You can't invent a part of the world, because you need it around. But as DM, you can, That's
true. So I've kind of been on hiatus from GMing for a while, other than like our fan games that we do every month, and even that's like a 3-person rotation. So before the pandemic, I had been running a very kind of like infrequent game with my family and one of my son's friends. It's just recently I started up a regular game, and for us, regular games are like monthly, and we just kind of like rotate through the weeks, like who's GMing.
Oh, okay, well, good. I mean, and you're enjoying getting to play a bunch.
Yeah. So I've just kind of been kicking back and playing, but because in the early days, I was generally the primary GM.
Yeah, that's kind of how I've thought of you over the years, as sort of the main GM of the stories, just from watching videos and things. But yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, Ted got into GMing because I kind of bullied him, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Let's be fair. You kind of have to do that sometimes when you're the only GM.
Yeah. It was like 20 years ago. So. When we first started out, there was 2 GMs, and one of them kind of dropped off, as tends to happen. So I kind of pressured Ted and Ryan to get into GMing, and so I would get little breaks here and there. And then it got to the point too where like the group just kind of kept contracting. And it's like, if we wanted to keep playing, someone had to run the game. And I was just like, you know what? I would rather play than not play. So, our games took on like a super casual tone to them. We would play with whoever showed up. And, the consistency with the story wasn't that big a deal anymore, just because we would rather play. Because there used to be a time where it's like, oh, if everyone's not here, we're not going to play. Like, we definitely had GMs that would be that way, and I was like, well, I think I would just rather play, and who cares if the story lacks consistency because player X didn't show up? Like, it's not a novel. It's just like, the stories are just for us. So.
Yeah, exactly. Learning to kind of be okay with players dropping out and who's playing changing and stuff has been a big thing for me.
Yeah.
In the early days, if we didn't have the 4 people there, I wouldn't run the game. And now I'm realizing I just like playing. As long as we get to play, I don't really I'll make it work. If someone has to disappear because evaporated to dust because we were left on a cliffhanger last session or something, that's fine. What does it matter?
Yeah.
The only time when I kind of make it a difference is when I'm doing a streamed game. I DM some games on GM some games on some friends' channel, and there obviously you kind of want everyone to be there. You've only got 6 or 7 or 8 sessions. You want to try and make it consistent. But at home, what's the point of freaking out about it?
Yeah, it becomes more work than it's worth. Honestly,
yeah.
If I can narratively figure out a reason why that thing is, fine. If not, who cares? And there's been times where narratively I do figure out a reason why it's going to be, but I never get to that point. Or there's been times where I haven't got to the point, and guess what? Not one player ever brought it up or cared. Right? They were just happy to be in the game playing right then and there.
Yeah, exactly. Reality kind of fills in the gaps. It's fine. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. I definitely love GMing. It's sort of my way of, especially these days during COVID, it's my way of doing good things for my friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'll take the energy I can and put it into putting on a good story for my friends and a good distraction for all of us, right? So,
Do you guys have a team game?
A team game?
Yeah, company game. Yeah.
We were while Humblewood was in the swing of production. I did run a campaign so we would take Friday afternoons and play some D&D. But like all good D&D games, it got disrupted. Chris, our writer, started up his own, and then we just started not having enough time and production things and new projects and stuff. I have been running a Blades in the Dark game for a few of the folks at work. We haven't had our game in a while. Sorry, chat. There's some of them in the chat, so I'm sure they're upset. So I have been running and trying to teach them about some other game systems and stuff out there. But it's something we need to do more of. We need to play together more.
Yeah, it's hard though, scheduling and stuff like that, sure. and also too, guys are even still lucky to be playing. I find oftentimes when I talk to people that are in the industry, they spend so much time working on this stuff, having regular lives, and then maybe even having a day job. It doesn't leave them very much time to get actual play in.
That's right. Yeah, it takes batteries like anything else. Playing games, and if you want a really good experience, you got to put a little more juice into it, and sometimes you don't have that, and that's fair too. So
you had mentioned off camera, the next kind of project that you guys are going to be kickstarting. Is that something we could talk about?
Yeah. As far as Kickstarters and things, I don't have any specifics, but we are play testing a new setting, little chunks of a new setting called Hekna, and it's a little bit of a play on our favorite timeless lich, but Hekna is a 80s cosmic horror killer clowns from outer space type setting for D&D. think a little bit like Strahd. It exists. It's a carnival called the Revelia that exists in its own pocket dimension, and someday you might just get swept up by the circus and end up there. And Heckna is at best, he's a friendly Beetlejuice kind of guy who is going to just mess with you a lot, and at worst, he's a murderous Joker-style clown that is going to tear you a new one. And it's exciting. It's completely different from. It isn't a world that I thought I would be super excited about because, frankly, clowns are terrifying. But working on it and coming up with ideas for it, I sort of just pop in here and there to work on it. But we have some amazing art for it, and if you go to thedecamany.com, you can get links to the playtest and you can take a look. It's all free to download. But yeah, little parasite clown noses that will climb up onto your face and start converting you, and a killer ball pit. I mean, we always knew those things were dangerous, so and then all of the goons at first glance look like kids, like little kids or teenagers or whatever, and they all have like candy themes. So there's the children of the candy corn, of course, and the Jawbreakers. I'm trying to remember if we call them the Jawbreakers or we rename them, but yeah, it's great. It's really neat, and we're really excited for it. And it's going to be something. It's on the complete opposite of the meter of Humblewood. Obviously, yeah. Humblewood is the sweetest, kindest setting you could ever wander in. And then there's this. There's Nightmare Circus. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Are there murder clown cars?
I don't want to say too much, Dave. You know what I mean? I don't want to give away the game, but we've definitely dug into the tropes and the ideas as best as we can. There's all the stuff that we love. Obviously, It is a huge influence because it is the original, killer clown, really, or the king of them anyway. But yeah, we want it to be fun and terrifying at the same time, and that's a careful tightrope to walk. But go check out the playtest, and you can tell us what you think. We've got feedback forms and stuff for it. But I've been doing a little bit of design in it here and there, and I'm really excited for people to see all the cool different things.
Sounds like some nightmare fuel, murder clowns.
Sure, yeah. And there's a chance you might turn into a clown yourself. So, sorry about that. But
you know what they say: if you can't beat them, join them.
That's right. Yeah. Honk honk.
Yeah. Oh man! Now I want to go back and watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
You can go ahead and do that, Dave. I'm not going to stop you, but I'm not going to join you on the couch. That's too much for me.
Darn.
Yeah, I can keep it. I could do spooky clowns in an RPG. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm ready for Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yeah, so I am not a horror enthusiast, but I do like horror. My daughter loves horror, and then everybody else in my house, no horror.
Right. Not
into it at all. So I am going to have to try and get her to watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space with me.
It seems like a good rite of passage.
Yeah. Well, even when she was really little, like 3 or 4, I'd be like flipping through the channels, and if something even remotely horror was there, she would like try and get me to stop on. I'm like, you're not watching this, you little psycho.
That kid was not me. I was like hiding under tables. The scariest thing that ever got me, the 2 scariest things, and I don't know why I'm broadcasting this on the internet, but there you go. The things that got me were, do you remember the film Harry and the Hendersons?
Yeah.
It was about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
The part there, they hit him with a car at the very beginning. John Lithgow puts him on the roof, and there's a part where he like leans into the window and screams. I was 4 years old, and I couldn't. From that point on, I couldn't watch anything that had a prosthetic face in it. Like, it just, there was something about knowing that there was a person under there, but I couldn't see what their real face looked like that terrified me. The other thing that got me was Ron Perlman was in that Beauty and the Beast TV show. I don't know if you remember that, but he was like in the sewers in New York. This is like before Ron Perlman's name was everywhere.
Yeah. I vaguely remember the show.
Yeah, and I couldn't even be in the room when the commercial was on. I had to hide. I had to go leave the room.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now Ron Perlman's one of my favorites. I mentioned Hellboy a few times, but back then it was just too much.
Yeah, like when you all right, so that I was going in a totally different direction. The first movie, there's like the first two experiences that come to my mind, where I think it was it the Swords and Sorcery, where like there's a scene where someone is like ripping out of someone else, and it's like kind of bloody and gory. And
see, now I'm like big into that stuff.
Yeah,
it's all about that weird body horror stuff, But yeah, thinking back to when I was a kid, I would not be able to handle that at all.
And like the one that got me for a while, American Werewolf in London.
Oh yeah,
the transformation scenes,
bones breaking and
and the hair's like poking through the skin. And some of like the like after he first got turned, some of the nightmare scenes that he would have prior to that. But I don't know. I think I was a little kid when that movie came out, though. I don't remember, how old I was, but yeah,
sure.
Those were definitely like some of my early like HBO experiences. Home box office, I don't know if, it was called back then, and lack of supervision, parental supervision.
Sure, yeah, that was a popular thing when we were younger. I think was. No, just doing whatever you want as long as you weren't out in the middle of the street.
Yeah. Free range. We were free range children.
That's right. We just got to eat the grass that was growing out there, and it was fine.
I mean, my memories as a kid was being pushed out the door and hearing a click behind me. Go play. I'll call you when it's dinner time or when it's lunchtime.
Right.
But it was a different time. We'll leave it at that.
Now we all hide inside and play RPGs.
Yeah, like it is kind of bizarre because like my kids hardly know what outside is. My son. Oh, I would have been 6 when that movie came out. I just had to see. My son hardly ever goes out. Because all of his friends are online anyway, so like, pandemic like meant nothing to him. He's just in his element. My daughter, on the other hand, is very social, and so now she goes outside and and kind of plays fetch really with herself. She'll go outside and kick the ball around and chase it, and then kick. And she's not an athlete. She's not athletic at all. Just very, very bored.
It's something to do, yeah.
Yeah.
That's too bad. I feel the worst for kids. I'm happy being a homebody, but yeah, I imagine missing your friends and stuff is rough.
Yeah, for the kids, it's a little bit rougher, and for the first 2 weeks she was still asking about sleepovers. I'm like, no, not gonna happen.
Right. Yeah.
So. Whatever. This is their thing. Like every generation has their thing to go through, and this is going to be theirs.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of what mine was when I was a kid. I'm in my late 30s, so
we had the we had the Challenger explosion when we were like kids, when we were younger. That kind of happened. Like, many of us were in school watching the launch.
I guess I could mention 9/11.
Yeah.
I guess I think I was in college when that happened, but it was Anyway, this has gotten real fun.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Well, yeah,
we covered death, horror, and real life nightmares. So,
this is how we grow.
That's right. Yeah.
But on the plus side, a lot of people are learning to use VTTs and play online, and so I feel like there's going to be a lot more gaming going on when all this ends, because people will be like, "Oh, I can't play in person, but I just spent the last year playing online, so I guess I can just keep doing that."
And now your gaming group is the whole world. You know what I mean? Like, there's no excuse that it's not easy to get a group together all the time, but like, there are lots of people. If you're willing to meet new people, then you're going to have a game to play, which is great. So.
Yeah. I was looking at the chat and they're mentioning some things which made me think of another movie. Poltergeist was terrifying when I was little.
I think I think I saw the box or something when I was a kid, and I don't know if I've seen it all the way through. I can picture the scene of the person coming out of the TV screen, and that's about enough for me.
Oh yeah, that's not even like the some of the worst stuff is when like the maggots are coming out of the guy's face, and there's all kinds of gross stuff.
Thanks for that, Dave. Thank you.
That stuff is still stuck in my mind. That's the kind of stuff that gets me, like the gross stuff like that. I'm like, the scary stuff. That's so bad. Oh my god! Speaking of it, so I was up late watching Crawl, which has some jump scares in it, but it's not like a really, really super scary movie. It's just people getting eaten by alligators. That's all. But I was thinking, I was cleaning my ear with a Q-tip, and I was thinking as I was doing it, I was like, this is probably a bad idea. And right then, jump scare, and I almost impaled my brain.
You almost stabbed your own brain. Well, I'm going to say that's not Krull's fault in this case, Dave.
No, definitely not. I'm an idiot, and if we learn nothing today, do not watch a scary movie and clean your ears at the same time. It's a terrible idea.
Yeah, or chop vegetables, or it's not a good time to practice your juggling. There's a lot of anything that involves specific timing or a blade is probably not a good idea. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, Doug brings up The Thing. Yeah, that also was kind of a scary, disgusting movie.
The Thing is probably my favorite horror movie, and that is the level of horror that I like in my stories and things. And so I love The Thing. Even the sequel, remake, or whatever I liked. So.
Yeah. So the problem for me with a lot of those movies was I was 10 or younger when watching them.
Right.
Again, refer back to lack of parental supervision.
That's right. Yeah. So it really depends on when you watch those movies. Yeah, it's true. Although then you get some kids that are hooked. They like the horror, and then being scared is fun. I mean, Doctor Who's premise was all built around scaring kids, and it was a kids show, and kids like being scared, I think, sometimes, but it's under the right conditions. So. Well,
yeah, it's that jolt of adrenaline.
Yeah.
Triggering that flight or fight response for sure.
Yeah.
So there's one question before we probably head out. I'm late to the chat. Apologize if you addressed it. We'll forgive you. But is your target audience for Humblewood?
Or do you mean who, Torchlock, or?
Yeah, I imagine it would be who.
Humblewood is. We want it to be an easy access for anybody. Like, it isn't a kids game. Like we tried not to approach it as being as a kids D&D game, but we wanted it to be friendly for kids. One of the cool things that we saw as people were backing it way back was as they joined our Discord and stuff. They would say, I'm waiting for my kids to be old enough. This is going to be how I'm introducing them to D&D. And we thought that was awesome. Like that wasn't necessarily our specific goal, but as we were making it, someone in the chat says the target audience is birds.
Bird enthusiasts.
Yeah, bird enthusiasts. Yeah. But really, it's for everybody. And it's like we said before. You can tune the genre of your D&D game to any kind of direction that you want. And so I'd like to think that you could tell spooky stories in Humblewood, and in fact, some of the stretch goal adventures are more spooky than others. But as far as what we wanted was an accessible game, accessible world that when you put something cute on the cover of something, and then if you open it up and it's just nightmare inside, you're kind of like you're kind of lying about what the contents of the book is. So we wanted to make sure that the friendliness of the art was also made the story and the adventure available. It's about the book. The adventure is about helping people and understanding people and building a better place, building a better Humblewood for everybody. It isn't about hunting down the bandits and murdering them all. It can be, but it is that So we it's for everyone, but definitely we wanted it to be kid and family friendly. if not focused.
Yeah, I mean, like any
showed up.
RPG, you can, once you get it, you can tell any kind of story you want with it.
Sure.
Some lend themselves better to others to specific genres and types of stories, for sure. I know, talking to Crystal Sully, she was telling me when you guys first reached out to her, she's like, "Are you sure you want me for this project?" Seeing that Owl Knight, right? And then you guys are like, "No, we need real monsters too, real villains as well."
Yeah, she, if I remember correctly, she drew the big wake worm for us, I think. And yeah, I mean, we wanted real threats, obviously, and they're all bird folk, so we obviously had to make. There's a lot of like snake in like, classically egg stealing kind of monsters that come in, because obviously that's what birds would be most terrified of.
Yeah.
Cat monsters, of course. The book has one of like the scariest looking NPCs in it of all time. If a scenario goes bad, there's a new raccoon Mappak character that will take over one of the bad guys' organizations, and the drawing of him is just like scary as heck. But you got to have a little bit of the monsters in there. But as far as the themes and things, we tried to keep it as friendly as possible.
Yeah, confirmed. It is the wake worm, and Crystal is an amazing artist. I love her work, and I always say she's so easy to find at a convention, because you just look for these giant, magnificent dragons, and generally that's her booth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So with that, we are up on the hour mark. Anything you want to say before we head on out?
Well, thanks for having me, Dave. Always fun to be out and chatting. Thanks to everyone I work with for being in the chat. Apparently, I will do the funny voice for you at another time. And
we'll hold you to that.
Yeah, I would really love if people go and check out the Hecna playtest. Go to thedecimati.com, follow the links around, you'll get your way there. We're really proud and excited about that. And check out the Big Bad Booklet. There's a couple of freebies that you can get. Pork and Bean is a freebie you can download. That was our April Fool's kind of bonus. And then there's a Christmas one called Golly Thank. He's a gnome. He's a gnome that abandoned something like a Santa's workshop to make his own killer toys. And you can check those two out. And if you like them, come check out our Patreon. We put out something brand new every month, and each one is fully illustrated and stuff. So this is a plug, I guess, but it's also just something I'm really proud of. So, and I'd like to see it in lots of people's hands. Other than that, hang in there. Black Lives Matter, and stay safe.
Well, thanks for coming on. Definitely appreciate it. Links are down in the description. They'll also be in the pinned comment once this switches over from live to recorded or whatever, however you want to term it. But with that, until next time, stay nerdy.